Today we are going to cover the custom probe settings in the MT Pro and set up a probe together. We're going to try to go through the steps that I took to get there, try to help you understand what the menu options mean, and hopefully make it easy for you to set up custom probes in the future. So first things first, when you click on this little arrow on the bottom right hand corner here, you should see this list. If you don't see that list, it's because the application for the program, and we'll actually pull this up here, in this folder, see the application for the program is in the same folder as the sensor's default file. You need to make sure that all of these files are in the same folder as the application. If you need a shortcut, you can right click on this, go to show more options, and then go to send to desktop, and that'll create a shortcut to the desktop like that. The file structure is super important with this application, so just make sure that you always maintain that file structure or you may have problems. So the first thing I want to demonstrate is just the general settings here. You could set up a channel really quickly. Like say I know I'm going to be testing 12 volt systems. I can just click on this. It gives me a plus minus 15 volt scale. You can see my wheel changes to max of 15, and that gives me plus minus 15. And if I want to go back to the default 1000 volt scale, I can just right click here and it goes back. What's cool is if I want to say do a throttle position sensor, click on this, it actually brings my 0 down and scales me up to 5 volt max. So that's pretty awesome that these are just set up like this, and I'll show you how to get those set up if you want to make some custom ones. So again, right click on this and it brings you back to the main setting. So we're going to go to our settings here, and then I'm going to show you first of all the general setting. So we go click on the 15 volt one that I showed you. See it's set limit here and it's active here. So you want to make sure that you always activate that. See how it grays out? Make sure that when you make a probe that's always there. The name's in there. You can put a description. You can change your units displayed and your minimum and maximum inputs. And I know that's a little confusing, but you want to look at it as input from the scope hardware to the display or to the program as the input. That's the best way I can kind of wrap my head around it. And so now I want to demonstrate the TPS one, the throttle position. See, they just changed the minimum input to -1, and that's how it automatically scales your 0 down. You see it's still on limit. There's just 2 boxes here. You're just putting in your minimum limit and your maximum limit and your units. And see, this doesn't even give you units here, but it's going to automatically be in volts. So you can see it's pretty basic and straightforward as far as that goes. So now we're going to go to current clamps, and I'm going to show you the Pico TA167, which is this probe, which I know a lot of people have. It's a really nice amp clamp, very easy to use, reliable, doesn't suck down batteries really fast. So this is my go-to high amp clamp. And you can see I have it already built in here on the 2000 amp mode. And I want to demonstrate how we set this up. So again, the input is going to be from the hardware to the screen. So you want to think of it as input is the display. So what is going to be inputted on your display? That's the best way I've been able to wrap my head around it. And you can see the units are in amps. And you have to put your minimum and maximum in, which means you're going to have to do some math, because this is 1 millivolt equals 1 amp. So we have to do the math to get here. We know this maxes out at 2000 amps, which that's the easy part, right? So we just put 2000 amps here, negative 2000 amps here, but then we have to determine the voltage of the output of the probe at the maximum output to the screen or input to the screen. So you can just do the math backwards to get there. So if 1 millivolt equals 1 amp, that means 1,000 amps would be 1 volt, or 2,000 amps is 2 volts. So the maximum output is going to be 2 volts maximum minus 2 volts minimum. I hope I explained that well enough for you to understand. I do have some notes here. I'm going to put this up and just read through it, and I hope that helps you. So the 2000 amp mode is 1 millivolt equals 1 amp. Max measured current is 2000 amps. Minimum measured current is minus 2000 amps, or negative 2000 amps. The max voltage out of the probe then is going to be 2 volts, or 2000 millivolts. The minimum voltage out of the probe is going to be negative 2 volts, or negative 2000 millivolts. I missed a negative there, but yeah, I just typed this up quick for you guys. So we're going to build the 200 amp mode together. So let's, and again, I put these little definitions here. So input is the display value minimum and max thresholds. Output is it's always in voltage, because the output is, the scope's only going to measure voltage ever. So all of your outputs for all of your probes are going to be in voltage, and then you're going to convert them to whatever the input display value minimum and maximum thresholds are. So the minimum and maximum thresholds of the probe output to the scope is what you're going to put in output. So let's go ahead and create one, and we're going to type that out. The Pico TA167, and this is the 200 amp mode. And why don't we just put our conversion right in here too, just to save the headache, just like I did with the other one. So this 200 amp mode was 10 millivolts equals 1 amp. So we'll go 10 millivolts (1 amp). Okay, so our unit is going to be in amps, and we're not going to use a limit. We're going to use a linear equation. And the nice thing is we don't have to build a linear equation. We just have to put our minimum and maximum outputs in. And we know our minimum and maximum input to the scope is going to be negative 200 amps for minimum and 200 amps for maximum. So then our output in volts from the probe to the lab scope is going to be what? Well, we have 10 millivolts at 1 amp. We know we can put out a maximum of 200 amps. So if this number is 200, what is our 10 millivolts? Well, that's really kind of annoying, right? So you're going to, you want to look at it as a decimal. So if you have 200 amps, you're going to have whatever 10 millivolts is times 200. But you're not going to times 10 millivolts. You're going to put 0.010, because 0.010 volts is 10 millivolts. And then you're going to times that by 200, and you're going to get 2 volts. So we know our minimum output is going to be 2 volts. And we know our maximum output is going to be 2 volts. And we're done. That's the whole setup. All we got to do is hit OK. And now when we go back in here, go to current clamp, and we have that set up. You see our maximum is 200 amps, and we have a min-max scale of 200 amps. And if we want to go back to, say we take that probe off, grab another set of test leads, we just right-click, go back to our basic setting of the default 1000 volt scale. So I also want to show the setup on the pressure sensors. Even though it's the same, it can be a little confusing because you're going from volts to PSI. But again, it's the same conversion. You just need to figure out the maximum and minimum pressure that's going to be displayed, possibly by your transducer. And this is the kind of the knockoff WPS or Chinese pressure transducer. So I'll go through these. This is the 15 to 500 PSI scale. So you can see the minimum PSI that we're ever going to see out of this is 15 PSI. So we're going to put that here because that's the minimum outputted to the screen from the scope. And then the maximum output is 500 PSI because that's the maximum output to the screen. It is 500 PSI. And then you just have to determine what is your voltage output at each. And that can take a little bit of figuring out, but there is information to figure out the conversion from PSI to voltage and your max input and outputs. And you can see here, same thing. And all of these have, very, very similar. So this one here is negative 15 PSI to 50. And you can see our minimum voltage is negative 1.5. Maximum output's 5 volts. Here, minimum output is 0.015 or 150 millivolts negative to make 15 PSI, 5 volts output maximum. And you can see this one is minus 2.5 volts and then a max of 5 volts. So this is the Chinese pressure transducer. I believe the WPS is very similar, if not exactly the same scaling. But you can see how that's done. So this is the voltage from the probe, the min and max voltage from the probe to the lab scope hardware. The minimum and maximum input is the input from the hardware to the screen or to the software, because the software is going to display whatever is input into it. So this is that's why it's calling it an input, is here. And then once it's in there, you just hit OK and you're done. And then you can go here and you can see we have our 3 pressure transducers here and we have our 2 amp clamps here. And obviously, the sky is the limit. You can make a bunch of general ones if you're doing something that is on the same scale all the time and you're testing a bunch of one thing. You can set it up for 1 volt, 5 volt, or whatever custom one you want. So anyway, that's all I'm going to cover in this video. I just wanted to demonstrate how to set those up and kind of help you through any questions or problems you might have. So I hope that helps. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.